I will say unequivocally that we are experts in dealing with children. Let me say that again, experts in dealing with children.
The family's attorney insisting the father and son entered the U.S. legally.
Liam and his dad did enter the United States at a port of entry to seek asylum.
4:47 a.m., Minneapolis, Minnesota, February 2026. The temperature had dropped to 11 below zero. Fog rose from the Mississippi River in thick gray sheets that clung to the bridges and wrapped around the downtown towers like funeral shrouds. The streets of North Minneapolis lay empty under flickering sodium lights, ice crystallized on every surface. In the distance, a freight train groaned across the rail yards near Broadway Avenue, its whistle cutting through air so cold it seemed to crack. Then the silence shattered. 47 black SUVs and armored tactical vehicles materialized out of the fog, rolling without sirens, without lights, pure coordinated force moving through residential streets with surgical precision. FBI hostage rescue team operators advanced in formation toward a warehouse complex on West Broadway. DEA special agents in midnight tactical gear surrounded a cluster of massage parlors and money transfer shops along Lake Street. ICE enforcement and removal operations teams sealed off a 3-block radius in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood, their armored vehicles blocking every exit route. SWAT teams from Minneapolis police moved alongside federal agents, stacking at doorways, waiting for the signal. Across the river in Saint Paul, the operation mirrored itself. Federal agents hit a trucking depot on the East Side Industrial Corridor. DHS investigators surrounded a luxury high-rise overlooking Rice Park. Black Hawk helicopters with FLIR thermal imaging swept above the city, their cameras feeding real-time intelligence to command centers humming with digital screens. This was Operation Frozen Crown, and it was happening simultaneously across both cities. Dozens of targets struck in perfect coordination. At the West Broadway warehouse, the breach came fast and brutal. Flashbang grenades exploded through windows in blinding white light. Battering rams demolished reinforced steel doors. FBI operators poured through the breach points, their voices sharp with tactical commands, their weapons tracking every shadow. Inside, they found a legitimate-looking textile distribution center. Bolts of fabric stacked on industrial shelving, shipping manifests pinned to clipboards, forklifts parked in neat rows. But behind a false wall concealed by a hydraulic shelving system, they found the real operation. A counting room with plastic-wrapped stacks of currency organized by denomination. 3 men sat frozen at a steel table, their hands hovering over cash they would never finish counting. Burner phones littered the floor. Ledgers written in coded shorthand filled an entire file cabinet. The initial cash estimate exceeded $14 million. But cash was just the beginning. Through a freight elevator hidden behind what appeared to be a commercial freezer, agents descended into a distribution hub that made veteran narcotics investigators stop and stare. 47 kilograms of cocaine, vacuum-sealed and stamped with cartel logos. 23 kilograms of crystal methamphetamine so pure it looked like shards of glass. And in climate-controlled storage cases, enough fentanyl to kill every person in Minnesota 3 times over. Special Agent Carla Mendez, a 22-year DEA veteran who had worked cartel cases from Tijuana to Miami, would later write in her official report, "I have never encountered this volume of narcotics in a secondary market location." Minneapolis wasn't a distribution point. It was a regional headquarters. Across the city, similar discoveries unfolded in rapid succession. At the Cedar Riverside complex, ICE agents discovered a human trafficking transit house operating behind the facade of a refugee assistance center. 14 individuals were found locked in basement apartments. 3 were minors. All had been moved through a smuggling network that stretched from the Texas border through Kansas City and Des Moines. Some had been there for weeks, others for months. They were promised legitimate employment. They were given captivity instead. In Saint Paul, the trucking depot raid yielded 18 tractor trailers equipped with sophisticated hidden compartments. Hydraulic panels concealed spaces capable of holding dozens of people or hundreds of kilograms of product. Shipping manifests showed regular routes to Chicago, Detroit, Milwaukee, and Denver. The depot had been operating for 6 years without a single DOT violation, not because they followed regulations, but because someone made certain nobody ever looked. The luxury high-rise produced the most devastating discovery. Penthouse Unit 4700 belonged on paper to a shell company registered in Delaware. Inside, federal agents found a communications center that looked like a military command post. Encrypted servers hummed in climate-controlled racks. Satellite uplink equipment connected to dishes on the roof. A wall-mounted display showed a digital map of the entire upper Midwest with real-time tracking of shipment locations, personnel assignments, and routes labeled as protected corridors. But the safe changed everything. Concealed behind a bookshelf, the safe required 3 separate access codes. The FBI safecracker needed 40 minutes to defeat the locks. Inside, agents found documents that transformed a drug investigation into a corruption scandal. Organizational charts showing cartel connections to elected officials. Payment records for dozens of law enforcement personnel. Encrypted ledgers tracking bribes disguised as campaign contributions. And a master file labeled Operation Lake Frost, a blueprint for criminal infiltration so comprehensive it read like a manual for conquering a state from within. The name listed as principal coordinator made the FBI team leader immediately contact Washington because the signature on those documents belonged to Governor Raymond Stoltz, one of the most powerful politicians in Minnesota. 9:22 a.m. FBI Cyber Forensics Division, Brooklyn Center Field Office. The servers seized from the penthouse arrived under armed escort. 12 hard drives, 4 encrypted laptops, 2 satellite communication arrays. All of it now sat in a federal forensics laboratory, while 16 analysts began the methodical work of digital extraction. By noon, they had cracked the first encryption layer. By 3 p.m., they understood why the cartel had invested so heavily in protection. Operation Lake Frost wasn't a drug distribution plan. It was a hostile takeover blueprint for an entire state. The network diagram that emerged looked like a constellation of corruption stretching across the upper Midwest. At the center sat the Espinosa Syndicate, a splinter organization originally connected to the Sinaloa cartel but now operating independently with ambitions extending far beyond traditional territories. Their leadership had recognized something other criminal organizations missed. The coasts were saturated with law enforcement. The border regions burned hot with scrutiny. But the heartland lay wide open. Minnesota offered everything a sophisticated criminal enterprise could want. Major highway intersections connecting to every corner of the country. Rail lines carrying freight to both coasts. International border proximity with Canada. A diverse immigrant population offering recruitment opportunities and operational camouflage. A stable economy generating enormous cash flows. And most critically, a political culture built on trust. The Espinosa Syndicate had spent 7 years systematically exploiting that trust. The financial architecture was staggering. 63 shell companies registered across 7 states. 14 restaurant chains used for money laundering. A regional trucking consortium that moved both legal freight and cartel product. A network of payday lending operations. A fake nonprofit foundation that received state grants while funneling money offshore. But the true genius of Lake Frost wasn't the financial engineering, it was the protection. The documents revealed systematic compromise of law enforcement at every level. Patrol officers who altered routes on specific nights when shipments moved through. Border agents who pre-cleared certain vehicles. Prosecutors who dismissed cases using procedural technicalities. Judges who granted bail to cartel members while denying it to competitors. And coordinating all of this from the top sat Governor Raymond Stoltz. Not figuratively at the top. Literally documented as the principal coordinator. His official state email had been used to communicate with cartel logistics planners. His digital signature appeared on documents approving protected routes and timing windows for major shipments. A separate financial file showed wire transfers totaling $17 million to offshore accounts registered under his wife's maiden name. This wasn't corruption in the traditional sense. This was command-level collusion. Governor Stoltz hadn't been bribed by the Espinosa Syndicate. He had been recruited 7 years earlier during his first campaign for statewide office, when he needed money and the cartel needed a friend in politics. They had grown together, and now the governor of Minnesota was effectively serving as the cartel's chief operating officer for Midwest expansion. Minnesota hadn't been infiltrated. It had been purchased and transformed into a narcotics empire fortress. 6:04 a.m. Day 3. FBI Joint Operations Command Center, Fort Snelling. The command center hummed with controlled intensity. Digital screens covered every wall. A massive tactical map dominated the center of the room, showing over 200 red markers pulsing across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska. This was no longer a local drug bust. This was regional eradication warfare. Operation Frozen Crown Phase 2 mobilized over 1,200 federal agents. FBI, DEA, IC, and DHS personnel coordinated with state police from 4 jurisdictions. 70 SWAT team members staged at forward operating bases. Minnesota National Guard Black Hawk helicopters provided aerial surveillance. U.S. Coast Guard vessels patrolled Lake Superior shipping lanes. U.S. Marshals prepared detention transport for what analysts predicted would be hundreds of arrests. At exactly 6:30 a.m., the second wave launched. In Duluth, agents stormed a port facility where shipping containers had been arriving from Thunder Bay, Canada with falsified documentation for 3 years. Inside, they found 122 kilograms of heroin and evidence of a smuggling route extending through Canadian networks. In Rochester, a suburban home belonging to a retired Minnesota state trooper concealed a sophisticated money-counting operation. The trooper, who had spent 31 years in law enforcement, had been on cartel payroll for the last 8. In Fargo, a farm equipment dealership served as a transfer point for human trafficking victims being moved to oil field labor camps in western North Dakota. 12 victims were recovered. 7 suspects were arrested. In Sioux Falls, a chain of car washes had laundered an estimated $40 million over 5 years. In La Crosse, a medical supply company had been replacing legitimate pharmaceuticals with cartel-produced fentanyl pills. The counterfeit pills had reached pharmacies in 3 states, killing at least 17 people. And in a rural area outside Mankato, agents discovered something that would dominate national headlines. A tunnel system, 700 feet long, reinforced with steel support beams, equipped with lighting and ventilation, running beneath a farm property owned by a holding company traced to Governor Stoltz's brother-in-law. The tunnel connected a barn to a warehouse separated by a county road. The Espinosa Syndicate hadn't just infiltrated Minnesota. They had built permanent infrastructure for a drug empire designed to operate for decades. By the end of day 3, the numbers told the story. Total drug seizures: 847 kilograms of cocaine, 312 kilograms of methamphetamine, 156 kilograms of heroin, and 2.1 million fentanyl pills. Total cash recovered: $89 million in currency plus assets valued at another $170 million. Total arrests: 247 individuals across 6 states. Total law enforcement personnel arrested: 34 sworn officers, including 2 county sheriffs, 4 police chiefs, and a sitting state senator. The criminal underworld took more damage in 72 hours than in the previous 7 years combined. But Operation Frozen Crown wasn't finished, because buried in the Operation Lake Frost files was one more revelation: the Day of Truth. Analysts found references scattered throughout encrypted communications. Day of Truth preparation. Day of Truth protocols. Initially, investigators assumed it was code for a planned drug operation. But as they assembled fragments from multiple sources, a different picture emerged. The Day of Truth wasn't a cartel operation. It was a political movement manufactured by Governor Stoltz and his cartel partners. A massive rally scheduled for downtown Minneapolis, officially billed as a celebration of transparency and Minnesota values. Thousands of supporters had registered. Media coverage was guaranteed. But the Operation Lake Frost files revealed the true purpose. Day of Truth was designed as the ultimate distraction, a massive public event that would dominate every news cycle while the Espinosa Syndicate executed its largest operation in history. 100 vehicles moving simultaneously across 12 protected routes. $40 million in product. Enough fentanyl to supply the entire Midwest for 6 months. The rally wasn't about transparency. It was about creating a media blackout for criminal operations. And the files revealed something even more audacious. Governor Stoltz planned to use the Day of Truth rally to announce his candidacy for President of the United States. He wasn't just protecting a drug cartel. He was planning to take their operation national. The arrest of Governor Raymond Stoltz occurred at 4:47 a.m. on day 4 at his private residence in Wayzata. FBI tactical teams surrounded the property, while a specialized entry unit breached the front entrance. The governor was found in his bedroom, reaching for a cell phone that was already being jammed. He said nothing during his arrest. He said nothing during transport. He said nothing during booking. His silence was the silence of a man who understood that every word could be used against him. But his silence couldn't stop what the investigation had already uncovered. Forensic examination revealed systematic betrayal at every level. 112 sworn officers across 14 departments had received payments from cartel-connected sources. Payments ranged from $500 monthly for patrol officers to $50,000 annually for command staff. The corruption pattern was always the same. First contact came through legitimate channels, an offer for off-duty security work or consulting. Then came the first payment. Then the first request, small at first. A route change, a delayed response, a piece of evidence that went missing. The requests gradually escalated. A dropped investigation, a warned suspect, a leaked raid schedule. By the time most officers realized what they had become, they were too compromised to escape. Internal Affairs found that cartel-compromised officers had sabotaged at least 47 major drug investigations over 6 years. They had leaked information that led to the murders of 2 confidential informants. They had facilitated escapes for cartel members who should have been in federal custody. And they had done something else that would become the most controversial element of the entire operation. They had weaponized immigration enforcement. The Espinosa Syndicate understood that immigration enforcement created both risks and opportunities. Risks because their human trafficking and migrant smuggling networks depended on moving people across borders. Opportunities because the same system could be manipulated to eliminate rivals and silence witnesses. Compromised officers had used immigration holds to detain individuals who threatened cartel operations. Witnesses to trafficking who had seen too much. Competitors in the drug trade. Community members who asked too many questions. All of them were swept up in what appeared to be routine enforcement actions, then processed through a system designed to remove them before they could provide testimony. The Operation Lake Frost files showed explicit coordination between cartel planners and corrupted federal officers. Names were flagged in databases using false information. Enforcement operations were targeted at specific addresses on specific dates. Then investigators found a document that would generate intense public outrage. A list of 847 individuals who had been detained and deported over 6 years based on false information provided by cartel-connected sources. Not criminals, not security threats, victims, witnesses, families. The list included children. 23 minors had been separated from their families during enforcement actions orchestrated by the Espinosa Syndicate. The youngest was 5 years old. Her mother had witnessed a human trafficking operation, women being moved through a house in her neighborhood. She mentioned what she had seen to a neighbor she thought she could trust. That neighbor had connections to the cartel network. 3 weeks later, both mother and daughter were detained. The mother was deported within 90 days. The 5-year-old child spent 4 months in federal custody before being reunited with her grandmother, 5 years old, detained because a drug cartel had compromised the system that was supposed to protect her. This wasn't immigration enforcement. This was weaponized government power in service of organized crime. The collapse of the Day of Truth protests began before they even started. As news of Operation Frozen Crown spread, the organizational structure behind the rally disintegrated. Key coordinators were arrested. Funding sources were frozen. The nonprofit organizations promoting the event were exposed as cartel fronts. Thousands of Minnesotans who had planned to attend discovered that their grassroots movement had been manufactured by criminals, that the transparency they thought they were demanding was actually a smokescreen. Some refused to believe it, some still refuse. But the evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, encrypted communications, witness testimony from cartel members who chose cooperation over life sentences. The Day of Truth had been built on lies, and that foundation collapsed under federal investigation. The protests that did occur were small and chaotic. Confused supporters mixed with angry community members who felt betrayed. Media coverage focused entirely on the criminal revelations. By noon, the downtown Minneapolis venue sat mostly empty. The Day of Truth had become the day of reckoning. Over the course of Operation Frozen Crown, federal agents dismantled a criminal network that had spent 7 years embedding itself into Minnesota society. They arrested a sitting governor who had sold his office to a drug cartel. They exposed systematic corruption across 6 states. They seized enough fentanyl to kill millions. They rescued trafficking victims who had been invisible to the system. But they also exposed something larger. The Espinosa Syndicate didn't succeed through violence. They succeeded through patience. They didn't shoot their way into power. They bought it, cultivated it, grew it over years of careful investment. Governor Raymond Stoltz didn't become a cartel asset overnight. He became one gradually, one favor at a time, $1 at a time, until the line between legitimate politician and criminal conspirator had disappeared. That's what keeps federal investigators working late into the night. Not the drugs, not the money, the patience. Criminal organizations are learning that real power doesn't require bullets. It requires infiltrating systems rather than attacking them. It requires building relationships with people who control legitimate authority. Minnesota was a test case, a proof of concept, and it almost worked. If FBI analysts hadn't flagged unusual financial patterns, if a single honest prosecutor hadn't noticed strange dismissal patterns, if one corrupted officer hadn't gotten greedy, the network might still be operating today. Governor Stoltz might be announcing his presidential campaign. The Espinosa Syndicate might be planning expansion into 5 more states. That's how close it came. Because somewhere right now, in some other state, another ambitious politician is having a conversation with people who promise to solve all their campaign funding problems in exchange for a few small favors. The investigation continues. Grand juries are reviewing evidence. Federal prosecutors are building cases that will take years to prosecute. Defense attorneys are filing motions. Raymond Stoltz remains in federal custody without bail, charged with 37 felony counts including racketeering, conspiracy to distribute narcotics, money laundering, obstruction of justice, and abuse of public office. His attorneys call it politically motivated persecution. The evidence tells a different story. 34 law enforcement officers face criminal charges. Many more face termination. The Minnesota State Patrol has announced complete restructuring of internal affairs. 3 police departments have been placed under federal oversight. The trafficking victims are receiving support from federal victim services. Some have agreed to testify. Others remain too traumatized to speak publicly. The 5-year-old girl who spent 4 months in detention has been reunited with her grandmother. She doesn't understand what happened. She may never fully understand the forces that tore her family apart. But she's safe now. That matters. Community organizations across the Twin Cities are working to rebuild trust shattered by revelations of how deeply corruption penetrated their neighborhoods. It won't be quick. It won't be easy. Some damage can never be fully repaired. But it can be acknowledged. It can be faced. And it can become the foundation for building something better. If you're still watching, tap the like button so more people see this story. Comment exposed if you believe this corruption needs to be dragged into the light. Share this with someone who thinks these things only happen in other places, because that's exactly what Minnesota thought too. Power doesn't always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it moves quietly through handshakes and favors that seem harmless until you see the full pattern. Sometimes it builds its empire one compromised official at a time, one paid-off officer at a time, one silenced witness at a time. The cost isn't always measured in bodies. Sometimes it's measured in families torn apart by a weaponized enforcement system. Sometimes it's measured in communities flooded with poison, while those sworn to protect them looked away. Sometimes it's measured in the slow erosion of faith in institutions democracy cannot survive without. Minnesota lost something during those 7 years. Something beyond drugs seized and money recovered. Something beyond politicians arrested and officers fired. It lost the assumption of good faith, the belief that systems meant to protect citizens were actually working in their interest. That belief has to be earned back through the kind of accountability Operation Frozen Crown represents. The willingness to investigate even the powerful. The courage to prosecute even the protected. The commitment to follow evidence wherever it leads. That's what happened in Minnesota. That's what needs to keep happening everywhere. Because the Espinosa Syndicate isn't the only criminal organization that noticed how vulnerable the American heartland is. They were just the first to act on it at this scale. Others are watching. Others are learning. Others are looking at their own states and asking the same question. How long would it take? How much would it cost? How deep could we go before anyone noticed? The answer determines whether Minnesota was an anomaly or a preview. And that answer isn't written by federal agents or prosecutors or politicians. It's written by ordinary citizens who pay attention, who ask hard questions about their officials, who demand real transparency, who understand that democracy isn't a spectator sport and silence is never neutral. The day of truth collapsed because it was built on manufactured lies. But truth itself doesn't collapse. It accumulates until eventually it becomes impossible to ignore. This story is a reminder of that fact. A fictional dramatization built on real patterns and real dangers that exist in communities across America. Pay attention to your community. Ask questions about your officials. Demand transparency from your institutions. Because if you don't, someone else will fill that silence. And you might not like what they build there while you weren't watching.